Hello and welcome to another Doctor's Assistant 1 video. Today I'm doing the review of the 8th Doctor Time War box set Volume 3 on the channel. This is just the sort of cardboard sleeve that it comes in, at least if you get it physically obviously. Doctor Who logo there, the Valiard, Tamazan, Bliss, the Doctor, the 8th Doctor even, some Daleks, the TARDIS, Doctor Who Time War, Volume 3, Big Finish, Wheel of Stories. Then on the spine, if I can even, on the spine it just says Doctor Who, then there's a nice picture of Paul McGann's 8th Doctor, the 8th Doctor Time Warp, Volume 3, and then on the back it just has a quick synopsis of the Time War, briefly, of what it is, episode names, as well as who wrote them, and then the director, who is Kent Bentley, even words, and then and I'm gonna go through the stories. I mean the covers first, even. Cover wise, I'd probably say I like Fugitive in Time and the War Valiard covers the most, maybe because they've got the most amount of people and stuff in the background and backdrops and whatnot, and the colour scheme as well is nice as well, like the sort of reddish colour of that one, and I really like the time controller, like Dalek. I don't know if he's in that many covers actually, or on that many covers, and then just having the War Valiard is pretty cool on the cover obviously, and that. Yeah, so starting off with the first story to kick this box set off, State of Bliss. I don't know what it is with the 8th Doctor Time War box sets, but I always feel like, personally, they always seem to start off rather weakly. I think I'd say either maybe Starship Atheus on a second re-listen, or maybe Lords of Terror is slightly either better or worse, but I don't know, like, neither of those three, those two or this one particularly stand out. State of Bliss, I mean the cover is super dull and boring and uninteresting, as is Famished Lands as well. Like, they're just barren and boring, and colour scheme for this one I don't mind too much. It's just a sort of cool greenish colour. This one's just a purpley dark bluish colour, and that's boring in my opinion. But even so, more so with State of Bliss as a story, it was just dull, boring, uninspired, really sort of just, it's an hour long story. Each of these stories are an hour long, and yet State of Bliss felt like, 4 hours. It felt like it was never going to end. It's a character piece around the character of Bliss, who is a character that I just don't find that interesting anyway. And it was very, for lack of a better term, timey-wimey, paradoxical, but not in a good way, and in a boring... It was disengaging, like, there was nothing, I couldn't find... There was only maybe one part of this story, there was one segment, a track or two, where I was actually engaged for a while, and then that side character went, and then I stopped being engaged. And no, I don't mean this to sound funny, or as funny as it might sound, but I really liked the ending. Like, the ending was the only good bit, and even then it was mainly because I think there was another character introduced into the storyline, or whatever, and because it's a character piece of Bliss as well, the Doctor takes a back seat, which wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that, unlike the Doctor, Bliss, as I say, is just uninteresting in my opinion. She's boring, she's dull, she's not got that much to do or say, and that. And, what was I going to say? And I think, yeah, it feels like Series 7 Part 2 with Clara being split up into loads of different versions of herself and her time stream, but on audio, so there's no visuals for that, but with a way weaker, even weaker and less interesting and charismatic, I guess, character and that. Yeah, just a really weak, dull, boring, uninspired sort of story. Again, the only thing that... There was only one little segment that kept me sort of intrigued, and then or part in the story, and then, as I say, the ending. There was something towards the ending that I can't even remember off the top of my head right now that did engage me, but then the rest of the story was just boring. Out of 10, I honestly would give it a 5 out of 10. It's not even offensively bad. That's the worst thing. It's just so run-of-the-mill, sort of what I expect Doctor Who on audio to be, which, especially in the Time War, where you could be doing way more experimental stuff, but with an hour-long format, or trying to almost evoke really early monthly range Big Finish audio stories, but try and condense them down into an hour. This one just feels like a really boring filler episode of the new series, and I mean that in the worst possible way, I guess. So that was State of Bliss by Matt Fenton. It was, again, very boring. It wasn't even rage-inducing or anything. It just... It doesn't push the boat or push anything outside the box. It's just so confinedly just in the box. It's boring. Moving on to the Famished Lands, which was an improvement, definitely, over State of Bliss. I originally had my score at a lower score than it is now currently, which, when I tell you, might surprise you, I don't know. But the Famished Lands, both the first two stories don't feature the Daleks either, and I think the Famished Lands does do still an interesting story that I think maybe damaged State of Bliss, I don't know. But either way, the Famished Lands, what it really reminded me of is an episode of Star Wars The Clone Wars, the Dave Filoni sort of 2008 sort of series. There's an episode, or a two-parter, or a trilogy even maybe, of episodes in that show where there are these people, the species that are like a peaceful race, that don't want anything to do with the war, with the clones and the separatists in that show, and all the droids. And the Jedi are there, and they're trying to defend these people, and there's one of their leaders is still like, no, we don't want anything to do with this, we're pacifists, we don't even want peacekeepers here, peacekeepers there and that. And this kind of reminded me of that, like the sort of tone and the vibe and that, and the Doctor was a lot more in the forefront, which is always good, because I actually really like Paul McGann's 8th Doctor. Bliss was working well with him. There was a funny bit as well, in the story. There were these giant robots, the Enablers, which I actually really like the name of, because in the context of the story it really works. There's a part of this story which, hopefully this isn't too much of a spoiler, but kind of reminds me of Army of Death, an 8th Doctor monthly range release that I reviewed way back when. And then, it's all about like the morals and ethics of war and stuff like that. And even though there are no Daleks in this story, as I say, it's very much about the sort of aftermath of Daleks being, raging across the universe, and again, it felt very Star Wars-esque, because it felt like, there was something about the planet, or the planet they were on, and in conjunction with like trade routes, which again is a very Star Warsy thing to say, which might fear some, or might be negative for some people, some Doctor Who fans, but honestly, I think that was a bigger strength. I think maybe the Time War box sets could have steered more into the Star Wars themes and sort of stories. Maybe more so than some of these, like, State of Bliss and, Starship of Theus kind of things. Or the last episode of the first box set, whichever that one was called, because I didn't particularly care for that either. It had some interesting baddies, and I liked the setting, I liked the setup and the pace of the story. It went by very nicely, as opposed to, again, State of Bliss. So I'd give the Famished Lands an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed that one. Originally I had it at 7 out of 10, but I thought I'd bump it up a bit, because I kind of liked it a bit more than a 7 out of 10, I think. Moving on to the third episode of this series, Fugitives in Time. I liked the sort of beginning bit. There was almost like cliffhanger like sort of thing where before the title sequence happened, which was nice. It was predictable how they would get out of the situation, or that they would get out of the situation, but it was nice anyway that it was from there. I really liked the introduction either in Famished Lands or in Fugitives in Time. Either way, one of those stories has or features Tamazan, or the leader person, I can't remember, Major Tamazan, is she called Major Tamazan? Anyway, yeah, she appears in the story and that's cool. This one features the Daleks finally. Not massively, but a bit. Honestly, I think that's one of my biggest criticisms. Even in the latter half, the Daleks are barely in this box set, and I mean barely. Like, the Daleks are in the War Valiard, I'd say about 50-60%. In Fugitives in Time, maybe down to 30-40%. So yeah, you're only going from 30-40% in this story to 50-60% in that one. And then, as I say, there are no Daleks in there, in either of those two. So, you know, yeah, sure, the other half has Daleks, but it barely. I also like the idea of this medieval time, well, not time, but planet. The time controller is kind of in this one, and he's always been a really fascinating Dalek type character to me. You know, some sort of Dalek with like quite a lot of oomph and a bit of power behind him, and wit about him, and strategy, and he seems like really foreboding and formidable and that, and might actually give the Doctor some thing to sort of run away from, sort of thing. Yeah, it was a decent enough episode. Fugitive in Time, I gave a 7 out of 10. Moving on to the last story, which is probably the main reason why most people bought this box set, is the War Valiard. Really good episode by John Dorney. You know, well, it's a mixed bag for me. It's very sort of timey-wimey and very sort of, yeah, like paradoxical, I guess, or yeah, timey-wimey. It's kind of reminded me a bit of State of Bliss, but done better, in my opinion. And that, I really liked the Doctor in this story. He seemed a bit more wittier, a bit more bantery, and that, yeah, I think going from him being a bit more aggressive, maybe, in this story, to being a bit more light-hearted, and War Valiard was a nice change of pace for that character. I liked Bliss in that story as well, in the War Valiard. I liked the Valiard as well. I don't know if he's voiced yeah, they got the original voice actor back to play the War Valiard or the Valiard, but either way, really cool. Yeah, I don't like how it ends, really. I'm not a massive fan of that. As well, another story, either the Famished Lands or Fugitive in Time, either one of those two ended really abruptly and weird, but so did the War Valiard. Honestly, this box set's been a very sort of, unfortunately, miss for me, like disappointing miss for me. I think it's easily probably the weakest 8th Doctor Time War box set, which is kind of upsetting and annoying, really. I think it's a really cool idea, really cool, unique idea to have the Valiard in the Time War, as opposed to just them having the War Master be in the 8th Doctor Time War box sets, because the 8th Doctor's already been in the War Master box sets. So it was more of a6unique, different idea, having like a Master-like character, but without having the Master. I just think, hopefully, the War Valiard even, crops up maybe in the 4th box set, maybe in the second to last story, or the last story. It's just a bit of a cameo, maybe, because I think the sort of Valiard sort of stuff, there's a lot more potential that they could do there. I think what they did wasn't terrible. What they did wasn't terrible. It wasn't mind-blowing either. I think it was just sort of, again, just sort of not 100%, you know, what they could have done. The Daleks are in, as I say, the War Valiard a bit more. I do like the War Valiard, the War Valiard sort of companion. I liked her. Can't remember her name though, but she was really cool. I liked her. I liked Bliss. I liked Major Tamazan as well in this story. you know, I like the Doctor being a bit more sort of like trying to help someone else, who is very much a personal ally to the Doctor, I guess, and someone that he really wants to help. So overall, I gave The War Valiant an 8 out of 10. Overall, I gave this box set 28 out of 40. So yeah, not great really. I think out of the box sets that I've reviewed thus far, that's one of the lowest ratings I've ever given any of the box sets. Which, I'll be honest, I would say that this is obviously a lot better than the Jenny box set, but that's not saying much. It actually features the Doctor, and it's set in the Time War, and I've always been fascinated by the Time War sort of era of the show, and I really love and adore Paul McGann's 8th Doctor, portrayal of the 8th Doctor. I just feel like, yeah, this box set was, again, a subpar from my expectations, so maybe that's me, maybe that's on me, I don't know. So if and when, or when even, the next box set comes out, maybe I should lower my expectations, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I didn't even have them that high, I don't think. Again, I think the main reason what made most people probably interested in purchase this release was The War Valiant. As I say, the other two were sort of above average stories, or just above above average. Well, that one's a 7, that one's an 8, that one's a 5, again, averagely boring, and then that one's an 8 as well, so I'd say, yeah, the strongest two stories of the box set for me personally were Famished Lands and The War Valiant. And then the weaker two were State of Bliss, obviously, and Fugitive in Time. So yeah, thanks for watching, comment, rate, and subscribe.